Hello class, good afternoon. So today let's talk about modes of reproduction in flowering plants. So flowers is the part of the plant that makes seed. So sexual reproduction in plants. Flowering plants, almost 90% of the species in plants kingdom are flowering plants. Angiosperm have seeds that are enclosed in a case called ovary. So flowers are the reproductive structure of plants. Their most important function is to ensure fertilization of the egg cell within the ovule. So just like in the human reproductive or the animal reproductive, there is plants also have reproductive structures. So here is the structure of a flower. So first is, let's talk about the corolla. So corolla is as a whole, and when you talk about one single part, that is what we call the petal. Neck is septal, or it must be sepal. So below the corolla is the sepal. So just corolla, then sepal. So the corolla comprises the petals of the flower. They came in various shapes and sizes. So the function for protection and attraction as well, because it gives beauty to the flower. They contain nectarines that give them the characteristic scent. So the scent of the flower comes from its petals. So their bright colors and scents attract agents of pollination. So the brighter the flower, the more pollinators it will attract. So after the corolla, next is the calyx. The calyx comprises the sepals of the flower. So I've said a while ago, the sepals are the typically green. The sepals protect the flower when it is still bud and contribute to the process of photosynthesis of the plant. The petals and the sepals from the floral envelope of the flower. So both parts or all parts are important. Next is parts of the pistil. So parts of the pistil includes the stigma, style, ovary. So those are the parts of the pistil. So pistil is the female reproductive structure. It is made up of the three parts, as I said a while ago: stigma, style, and ovary. So the stigma is the swollen knob tip of the pistil, while the style is the long slender tube that connects the stigma and the ovary. So style is in between the stigma and the ovary, while the ovary is the enlarged basal portion of the pistil that houses the ovule. So inside the ovary is the ovule. So that is the pistil. So let's just go back with the main structure of the flower. Next is the receptacle. So the receptacle supports the entire flower, while the peduncle or the stalk connects to the flower to the branch of the stem. So the pentacle is the lower part in this picture. So that is what we call the pentacle. It connects the flower to the branch of the stem. So the collective these parts is the calyx, corolla, receptacle, and the stalks comprises the accessory parts that protect and support the essential parts of the flower. So that is just the accessory parts of the flower. Next is the stamen. So the stamen and the pistil are comprises the essential part. So if there is the calyx, corolla, receptacle, and stalk are the accessory parts, stamen and pistil are the essential parts. So pistil and stamen are the essential parts. So we talked about the pistil a while ago, then let's move to stamen. So stamen is the male reproductive structure of the flower. It is composed of two parts, the anther and the filament. The anther is the expanded and the lobular structure at the tip of the filament. It is the pollen producing organ of the flower. So in the anther, it produces the pollens. Next is the filament is the stalk holds the anther. So that's it. The filament and the anther parts of the stamen. So these are the parts of the flower. Let's go back. So in stamen we have anther and the filament. So in the big flower we have the corolla and the calyx, the nectary, the receptacle, and the pedicel. While in the pistil we have the stigma, style, and ovule. So these are the structure of the flower. Pollination occurs when the pollen grain of the flower reaches the stigma of another flower. One sperm fertilizes an egg. The sperm cell fertilizes the female structure called polar nuclei. So we've said a while ago that the anther produces the pollens, and of course in the pollination process the pollen grain must reaches the stigma of another plant. So in this picture the pollen must reach the stigma. So the stigma is the swollen knob on the tip of the pistil. So the other pollen must reach that part of the flower. So the union of the first sperm with the egg cell becomes a plant zygote, while the union of the second sperm with the polar nuclei produces the endosperm. That's why in plants there is what we call double fertilization happens when one sperm of a pollen grain fertilizes an egg cell, while the other cell combines with the cell called endosperm. And actually, the union of the second sperm with the polar nuclei produces the endosperm, where the food storage tissue around the embryo. It also forms an outer core that protects the new seed. That is the reason why fertilization in flowering plants is referred to as double fertilization. So here is the pollination and fertilization process. So the fertilized ovules become seeds, then the ovary grows and becomes the fruit. The rest of the flower dries up and falls. So let's start with here in the microsporidium or the anther. So as I've said a while ago, the pollens must reach the stigma of the ovule or must reach the stigma so that the fertilization process will take place. So we have two kinds of pollination. We have the self-pollination and cross-pollination. So when you say self-pollination occurs when the pollen is transferred from the stamen of the one flower to the pistil of the same flower. So here is the picture. So it means that the pollen from this flower will reach its own stigma, and that is what we call self-pollination. Next is cross-pollination. The pollen grain is transferred from the other or another from the anther of one flower to the stigma of the another flower of the same kind. So just like here in the two pictures, we have two flowers. So this is what we call cross-pollination. The flowers from the stamens sticks to the bees as visit a flower to collect food. Then later on, the bees will travel to another plant of the same type, and the pollen on the bees sticks on the legs of the bees sticks to a pistil of a flower on the other plant. So there is what we call cross-pollination with an agent. The agent is the bee with the help of the bee. So that is what we call cross-pollination. So it requires agents to carry the pollen from flowers to flowers like butterflies, bees, dragonflies, and other insects. Water may also transfer pollen grains from anthers of another flower to its own stigma or to the stigma of another flower with the same kind. Wind also carries pollen grains. Wind may also blow the pollen grains and they may fall on the stigma of the pistil, and people can also be agents of pollination. So there are so many ways in pollination. It can be the help of nature, help of animals, or humans. So that's it for today.